Hello, this is my first attempt at a video. There's no script, I'm just doing this impromptu, so let's see how this goes. So the topic that I'm going to talk about today is metaphysics, if I can spell this in time. So metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that talks about reality. Now, you might hear the term used in common parlance to mean, if you hear the term metaphysical, someone might be meaning that you mean a superstitious being. So, a superstitious being, or an ideal being, is something that has, in essence, in attributes, that form an object nature. So the reason I say object nature is because if someone were to present you, this is a little annoying, there we go, boom, boom, boom. If someone were to present you with, say, a circle, so we'll just put a circle here, and someone would ask you, is the circle real? Well, if you believe that a perfect circle could exist, you might say, yes. But we can even just look at my circle for an example, and any artist out there will know that you can't make a perfect circle. So the answer, in my opinion, is no. Now, if I don't mean ideal being in this sense by metaphysics, what do I mean? Now, when I talk about metaphysics, I talk about what is real. Now, I'm also what is called a dialectical materialist. What is a dialectical materialist? A dialectical materialist is someone who believes, firstly, that the universe, or all that is in existence, or all that is real. So in metaphysics, the word universe is used in the scientific sense, but more broadly in the philosophic sense. So everything that's real in the universe is material. And what I mean by material is specific. Some materialists are strictly physicalists, like all matter must be observably coercive. That's probably getting ahead of myself. That's a definition of reality. So physical, that could mean a version of materialism, like all atoms and yeah, I'm scientific, but I am not a physicist, so I could go WIMP quark, atom, or no, boson, fermion, WIMP quark, atom, electron, and then, like all the compounds, but I just don't know the compounds. So that's a physical materialist. Then there's also substance monism, materialism. I am of the latter. And we can get into that later. But so the basic thing is the universe is material. The second thing is that all things are in flux. And thirdly, all let's see. Use the wrong word. All effects are caused by contradiction. Or all change, all flux is caused by contradiction. Now, anybody who has anything to do with political science might have come across this term in a political sense, and that is because a dialectical materialist is at the same time a philosophical worldview and a political worldview. The philosophical worldview is what I just explained. So let's put that arrow down there for philosophical. Actually, let's use this symbol for philosophy. Alright, theta. Philosophical outlook, and then the political outlook is, that wasn't right, but it's communism. The red, let's do red. I don't want arrows. It's communism. Yeah. So, why is this the case? Let's back up a little bit. Wow. So, if everything is run by contradiction, first we have to think about nothing and everything. The beginning of the universe. Damn it. Circles. Okay. So how did we get to everything from nothing? If materialists assert that there's nothing else that is real except material reality, how did all this start? It's reasonable to assume for many people that we need something of a first mover. Now, should I draw my beard? Not my beard. So this is supposed to be God. Man in the clouds. Heaven. I don't know why God doesn't have hair. It looks like a beret. God is Leonardo da Vinci, I guess. So this is the common explanation. A materialist does not believe this. Now, before, I did mention that I am a specific type of materialist called a substance monist. So what is substance monism? Substance monism is atheistic, but at the same time spiritual. And actively philosophical, scientific, and actively anti-religious. This does not mean that substance monists think that religious people are wrong to feel the way that they do, but it does mean that we think that, okay, basically we think that you're wrong. Yeah. Because we assert that there is no deity, but that what is spiritual is the universe that we talked about earlier. So, how can what is spiritual be material? Let's explore this unity. And before we move on, actually, I gave a broad outline for preconceptions of substance monism, but the pure definition is the belief that everything in the universe must consist of one substance. So all reality is one substance. Now, materialist substance monism says that this one substance is material reality. Now, how could all material reality with all its differentiations be one substance? Well, the main thing is that I mentioned it's still spiritual. So let's take this into account. Say existence is not yet. Let's pretend this circle is not a circle, but a point without mass, without volume. It's just the closest we could come to nothing. Now, I talked about contradiction before, and if in my conception of substance monism, if nothing becomes everything, then the very concept of a being, capital B, is contained in nothing and everything. Because if everything goes back up and up through cause to, that's effect, we'll say. So cause, effect goes up, cause, effect. So if that's true for everything, there's a necessary procession of all things that are existent, and they lead back to our point over here, the nothing, or the everything. Now, there has to be a unity between universes, or else this is impossible. So I'll outline this unity between everything and nothing. Take, for a visual symbol, what I'm about to draw. Oh, God. Be really kind here. Oh. Alright. So say every one of these crossroad points, here, 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 etc., are those nothing points we talked about before. Now, if that's the case, then this is the universe every time. But because the universe is a momentary explanation for everything that is, then this is also universe. So universe can sometimes equal undefined, And sometimes universe equals everything. Now, if we take the explanation for this on a scientific basis and say that what we're talking about is the Big Bang, we need to try to figure out what in the point remains, and then what from the point is able to create all existent reality. Now, the reason why I use substance monism for this explanation is it's terribly, terribly convenient. If all things have to go back to a root cause, this cause is the singularity. The singularity fluxes between singularity and manifest universe, like so. Then there is the unity. There's nothing else to describe, even if we can't describe it as of yet scientifically. Now, say this thing is God, or to the greatest extent what God could be. Then we could say that consciousness has a unity with matter. Now, why would I say this? This is a controversial thing to say. The reason I would say this is because, according to physicalist materialism, if you take the atom, right? Jimmy Neutron, yes, spinny, spinny. And then you go to life. So I'm just going to make a flower. Life. And then you get to animals. So, fine. I wanted to make it nice, but fine. And then you get to humans. And also, like, this is form resistant, because what I mean by human or humanoid is a self-conscious being. So you have pure matter, energy, which we know also are a unity. We essentially know, basically, that matter is an illusion. It is constrained energy swirling around itself, which creates the four fundamental forces: gravity, weak nuclear, strong nuclear, and I'm forgetting the last one right now, electromagnetic. So what we know is that whatever this matter is reducible to whatever energy is. Okay? But this matter goes from matter to life to animal or primary consciousness. And then self-consciousness or secondary consciousness. Blah, blah. Yeah. So, okay. Now, if we're trying to explain this form of organization based on a purely materialist basis, a physicalist materialist would say somewhere around here is an accident of organization that we're lucky to have, and here is also an accident where the quantitative just becomes qualitative. And then here, I think actually substance monists and materialists are in like general agreement that it's a period of evolution from this to that, from here to there. But you know, what is sentience? What is consciousness? You know, there's been a long debate in philosophy over what consciousness is. And the skeptics and the broad trend of philosophy before coming to dialectical materialism arrived at the consequences of Descartes, which was called idealism. So idealism is the idea that everything real, that universe equals ideas. There is objective idealism, which means that like everything comes from the mind of God, if you believe in God, or subjective materialism, where our perceptions kind of interact with each other in order to, I don't know, create reality together. This, I don't think I have to argue that one. This could have some plausibility, so it's worth getting into why this couldn't be the case. This talks about what I asserted reality was earlier. So reality, what makes it capital R real, okay, of course, whatever. Okay, so what makes something real is that it's coercive. Now, this isn't basic necessary connection, because even though I don't like Hume for political reasons, there is a reason Hume showed that induction through simple observation of cause-effect is not provable. So his basic reason is just because something happens next to each other indefinitely time to time doesn't mean that it has a connection of cause to effect. I agree with this, even though overall I don't agree with Hume. And the way that I agree with it is that the more evidence needs to be accumulated in terms of like what is actually a motor force behind a cause. So the answer for that later will be contradiction, the dialectical part of dialectical materialism. Contradiction. Okay. So, what is compelling in the way that we know what we're dealing with this reality is you can't blink and everything around you is not real. That is called schizophrenia. And I'm not, to be clear, I'm not making a joke about schizophrenia. It's a very serious condition, but to have a break from objective reality is either subjectivism or schizophrenia. I don't need to, that's not part of what I want you to learn. Don't learn that. So reality is objective. Okay. Reality is coercive. Can't ignore it. Okay. Alright. So if material reality is what is real, as in it's objective and it's coercive, and every cause has another cause going back through and through to a root cause, and this root cause is nothing, but we live in a universe of everything, and we don't believe in a deity. What could it be? And so that's why I answer consciousness and matter have a unity. Because I don't think with the physicalist materialist that all these things are accidents. I don't think that without an impetus, without a motor, there can go nothing to everything. Or that you can get organization use like Lego bricks, to life, to sentience, by accident. I think that there is a procession, and that it's natural for life and then self-consciousness to arrive in each manifest universe, no matter what comes before and what the universe looks like in all its arbitrary universality, or arbitrary, whatever. In other words, why exactly does blue look blue? I don't know. That's just the way it is in this universe. It could be different, sure. Time could go. No, time couldn't go backwards necessarily. I can't even. All I can speak of is reality, really. Like everything else is just a morphing of things that I've seen into a combination that is a negation of what is, like a unicorn, a horse with a horn and wings. Or no, that's a Pegasus with the wings. But where am I going with this? I don't know. I'm sure you noticed all the tangents. Let me take a moment to get back on track. While I do that, I will draw a nice hot cup of Java. Nice handle. Okay. That distracted me further. Right. So I don't think necessarily that this singularity is omnipresent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, omnipotent, all those omnis that are usually ascribed to the big G, God. I think that by definition, when there's nothing, then you are all those present, omniscient, omnipotent, etc. So, what do I mean by that? I don't mean in a classical sense of a deity that is thinking. I do not mean that a deity has thoughts, because thoughts, from a materialist perspective, come after a brain. So this singularity does not have thoughts. What the singularity does have is what's called fundamental consciousness. So say, here's the point. The point is aware in a rudimentary feedback loop sense that it is. And what it is a matter of uncertainty. But it's not an uncertainty in a thought. We have to remember that when we're doing this thought experiment about what the singularity could be, even my drawing this picture is a negation of what I'm talking about. Because I've hitherto been calling it nothing. But there is no such thing as nothing inside the way that our brains work. As soon as we posit nothing, we thereby imply a something else. A bridge, so to speak, where there is a noticeable gap. But without points after the gap, nothing is not noticeable. So the nothing that I'm talking about is not the nothing that we use as the idea and as the word in language. The nothing I'm talking about is a literal, complete neutrality. So how does a complete neutrality become impotized to create everything? If it's not nothing, it's not anything, it's not. There's not. See, bleh. So let's dive into this a little bit further. nothing in a true sense, that is all consciousness, no matter, has no thoughts as we have determined, but it does have consciousness that it is, in a sense that it is everything that is. So if it is everything that is, then this itself is a negating proposition. So the first thing that is, that comes from nothing, is everything. Not in a differentiated sense, but in a being sense. And we don't have the luxury, because of the Planck length, to investigate what the first beings were. I'm not going to spell that right, I'm just going to say that. Planck length, for those that don't know, is the shortest distance we can observe light. Anything shorter than that, we can't observe. And in the beginning of the universe, everything was smaller than a Planck length. Smaller. But it might go something like time, space first, then a contradiction of infinite matter in undefined or true zero space, turning into infinite matter in infinite space, or expanding space. Now, I can't be sure about the science of this, no one can. So this is why it's called metaphysics, and why it's philosophy, not science. It's just trying to draw science to the furthest degree that it can show us what might be the foundations of reality. So that ends where I can continue speaking, because, and I do want to know, metaphysics is not science. That is why there is the derogatory term metaphysical, to talk about things that are superstitious, especially among dialectical materialists. But I assert that there is a unity between consciousness and matter that leads inevitably to these higher organizations. And so there's something like an immanence in the decisions that are made, because they're arbitrary. Why does the universe go this way rather than that before there are beings with free will? There's not as if there's a preeminent free will, a deity, a god, like on the third eye thing. It's just consciousness being aware of its own contradictions. The contradiction being that if, that's weird. I don't like that. The contradiction being that there's only consciousness. It is everything, and there is nothing. That's very paradoxical. That's like the fundamental contradiction that has driven everything else since then, and leads us from fundamental consciousness, which is what I'm asserting the substance of everything is, you can call it God if you want. Buddhists just call it fundamental consciousness. Then leads to gross or motor consciousness. This is, just so you know, being taken, fuck. That doesn't look like what I meant it to. Let's try, fuck. taken directly from Buddhism. And then 2, subtle consciousness. But all the while, a block of wood is conscious that it is a block of wood. And please, please remember, I am not a kook. I do not think that the piece of wood thinks. But nonetheless, there's no deity somewhere else preserving this piece of wood. Everything that preserves it is inside the piece of wood. Which means that what started the universe, and then what considers everything of which this piece of wood is a piece, constitute the same substance. And that substance is fundamental consciousness to me. Which turns into energy and dark energy, which turns into matter and antimatter, which at the point of, I'm not going to be arbitrary, I'm not going to decide right now, but somewhere starting here or whatever, beginning here, is gross consciousness, which, agreeing with the physicalist materialist, does go all the way to animals, because we are just reacting many times off of our brains, the chemicals in our brains, and that's still gross consciousness. It's just a different way to explain this is mechanics, physics, chemistry, biochem. That's all complex compounds interacting with each other. Especially the further down you go, the more complex, the more gross consciousness it gets. But technically speaking, I guess energy and I guess simple matter are still gross consciousness. Because they're organized into forms. And then we get to self-consciousness, which is, or subtle consciousness. Now, let's go back to the dialectical part of everything I was saying, because I've explained the materialism and how my materialism is specifically substance monist, where I think that consciousness and matter are in fact in a constant unity, and our self-consciousness is just a matter of degree of consciousness, but that even the simplest atom does not lack so-called consciousness. It's just, in other words, once again, humans think they're more special than they are. Yeah. It is organization, the way that the physicalist materialists explain, but it is not mechanical, as the physicalist materialists explain. It is arbitrary and unpredictable and co-emergent and basically free. Everybody knows by now that in quantum physics we know that there's a certain level of not necessary. There's a breakdown of the steadiness of determinism. It's breaking down when we look at the quantum level, and the quantum level looks like true random. So if we're saying consciousness in the way that I am, this could literally just mean true random. But that, because of the binding, the quantum binding, of atoms, so that they have the same spin, no matter where they are after they've mingled. This could explain non-local communication, because it's actually faster than the speed of light. It's yeah, greater than c. Ugh. Because it's instantaneous. So if we can accept, if physics can accept that such non-local consciousness is possible, then we can also accept that where am I going? Damn, totally forgot. I know I was on the track to explain the dialectic part of dialectical materialism. So the dialectics part of dialectical materialism is that all change comes from contradiction. It explains the fundamental the base contradiction of the universe from nothing to everything. But when we talk about objects, these are metaphysical in the sense that they're superstitious. There's no such thing as an ideal being. Those are abstractions of our mind. To explain this a little further, let's go into it. Say here is a tree. So if you were to tell me where the tree begins and where it ends, you'd point right here to the line, right? But let's zoom in. Say we're on the atomic level right now. And sure, that's the bark over here, yada yada. But in the air is residue from the bark, which allows you to smell it. Now, if this didn't happen, you couldn't smell it. We know we can smell things. Also, particles from the air will interact with the tree. Now, there's not a direct osmosis because, as most of us know, photosynthesis happens in the leaves, and the nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon cycles happen in the roots. Well, part of it. Yeah, oxygen out, nitrogen, carbon in. My bad. Phosphorus maybe? I'm not positive on that one though. So, C for light. And if we do zoom in on that level, there isn't a line. That doesn't exist there. It's all stipples, you know, little pieces of matter, and they're always floating, always changing. So the dialectical part of dialectical materialism asserts that there are no such thing as objects. There's no such thing as me, Garrett, as a self. There's no such thing as my laptop. But it doesn't mean that they're not real. It just means that what we've abstracted is the idea unreal. The organization of the matter as it is does exist, and there are many different forms that matter takes. But the caveat is that there is nothing in isolation. So the old way of science, of taking things and trying to isolate them, put them in a box and examine them with magnifying glasses and figure out the nature of them, dialectical materialism says that's not science. we can use these abstractions of objects to talk conventionally so that we can function in the real world. And we can use them to build concepts, so they're useful in that sense. And we need language. But we have to also at the same time understand how these conventions of language that form our concepts can be limiting, to not describe what is actually real between the lines. And when we believe that what is around us are static objects that are unchanged by the things that they encounter, in a serious sense, even if we have to believe it in a practical, conventional sense, then we don't grasp the true nature of reality. So that's the philosophical and scientific portion of dialectical materialism, which is the same science that undergirds communism. And I will say I am a communist, but I wanted to go through the philosophical aspects of the worldview of dialectical materialism to kind of just show it is the most scientific worldview that has yet existed. It actually posits an epistemological break with mainstream science, and could radically revolutionize the scientific method if it were employed in all spheres of science. The only reason it isn't being used in science on a daily basis is because of its political implications about society and the objective laws of class warfare. But that's for another time. Alright, well, thanks.